I want to go across to Kevin Liptak. He's a CNN correspondent at the White House. Kevin, thank you for speaking with us. The president confirming this in a Truth Social post sometime back that India and the United States have arrived at a trade deal. The reciprocal tariff has now been reduced to 18%. Can you walk us through, if you have any more details, on what's just been announced?
You know, the president left some of the details a little vague in his social media message, but I think bottom line is that the president was able to get to a common understanding with Narendra Modi and essentially allow some of these tariffs to come off. He did make a few specific points. One was that India would halt its purchases of Russian oil. Now, it's not precisely clear what the timeline is for that. You know, India imports about 1.5 million barrels per day from Russia, and it doesn't seem as if that would be immediately replaceable with what the president says is American oil or Venezuelan oil. You remember the president has taken steps to bolster U.S. investment in Venezuela's oil reserves, but certainly that will take a lot of time and money to repair the infrastructure there to a level where it might be able to replace other countries' exports. But certainly that seems to be the president's ambition down the line. We do understand that as part of this deal, that 25% tariff, additional tariff that the president had placed on India due to its purchases of Russian oil, that would be coming off. So that's in addition to the lowering of the tariff rate that the president mentioned. He also said that India would be buying American products at the highest level, although he didn't specify what precisely that meant. And so in a lot of ways, this appears as if the president coming out to announce, you know, a signature agreement, but a lot of the details at this point remain to be seen.
The president also mentioned that India had agreed to buy Venezuelan oil. Potentially is the word that he used. Potentially Venezuelan oil. Do we know, how much Venezuelan oil is available out there in the market? How much of it will be controlled by the U.S. in terms of selling to other countries and so on and so forth? Any more sort of flesh you can add to the bone?
You know, at this point, not really. That the president's ambition has been to really scale up American investments in the Venezuelan oil fields. Of course, Venezuela, home to the largest proven oil reserves in the entire world. But a lot of the infrastructure that is used to drill it is dated, it's unsafe, and so it will require massive investments by American oil firms to get that up and running to capacity. And so it will take some time. You know, the president has said that the U.S. Will take ownership of much of the oil that's coming out of Venezuela. I think, if you're India and you're looking to replace your Russian imports, the one thing that's appealing for the Venezuelan oil is that it's the same type. It's the heavy, sour crude that's used to make, diesel, other offshoots that are, in the Indian sort of playbook for how they're using the Russian oil. And so it would be a good replacement. But at this point, there still needs to be a lot of work before the Venezuelan oil exports are sort of at the level where they could replace everything that India is getting from Russia. But I think from the perspective of the White House, it is the pledge to do that counts here. India has long been dependent on Russian oil products. That is why the president slapped that 25% tariff on in the first place. And so the willingness to wean itself off of those oil products, I think, is what the president was looking at here. But it will take some time, certainly, before I think Venezuela will be able to fully replace everything that India is getting from Moscow.
And also, the president did mention in his Truth Social post that India has agreed to buy 500 billion or commitment to buy American products. Is it similar to announcements that have been made in the
remain fuzzy, even months and months after the deals were arranged. But certainly this pledge by Narendra Modi to up investments in the U.S., I think, will have helped convince President Trump to bring these tariffs rates down. We don't, at this point, have a line-for-line itemized sort of list of what India has pledged to buy. The other, motivating factor here, I think, seems to have been India's deal with the European Union, which was just announced earlier this month, a lot of analysts had predicted that that would kind of light a fire under the White House to try and come up with an arrangement with New Delhi to try and ease some of the trade tensions there. This has been a dispute that's been going on for months and months and months, dating all the way back to when Modi was here at the White House very early in President Trump's second term last year. Obviously, the trade talks had stalled in some way, but clearly something had changed. And I think part of that may have been the U.S. seeing India make this deal with the European Union and recognizing that this was a market that they would really need to try and get something on paper with very, very quickly. And that seems to have been what happened here. The other aspect of this deal that the president mentioned was India lowering some of its non-tariff barriers, things like VAT tax and that sort of thing. That had also been one of the big sticking points for Washington. It had caused an enormous amount of frustration when you talk to trade officials here in D.C., and it does seem as if they've come to an arrangement on that front. But again, nothing has been sort of put down on paper yet, so we are awaiting details of what exactly all of these investments will amount to.
And just very quickly before we let you go, so we're also getting in word from the government here that India is now competitive. It's at 18% compared to some of the other export-oriented economies around this region. Indonesia is at 19%, Vietnam at 20%, Bangladesh at 20%. China, of course, the president has said that he's going there in April, and he's hoping to announce a deal with China at that point of time. How much of that is the sort of elephant in the room that at the end of the day, a lot of Trump administration folks and Trump acolytes have been saying that the whole point and the purpose of all of these tariffs is to try and restrict how much the rest of the world trades with China as opposed to how much they trade with the United States, and therefore the tariffs are helping is the case that they are making out to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of coming up with a trade deal with Beijing is certainly sort of the biggest prize in this entire trade war, this tit-for-tat tariff battle that has been underway really since President Trump took office. And clearly that trip in April will be, I think, a focal point as the president works to sort of try and negotiate something with President Xi Jinping. When we talk about imports of Russian oil, certainly the focus has been on India because of the tariff that the president put in place. But China, at the end of the day, is the top importer of Russian oil, and the president so far stopped short of punishing that country for doing the same thing. And I think the reason was that he is still in pursuit of this broad trade agreement. Now, the president will say and has said that he's made progress on that front over the last months, including getting China to buy billions of dollars of American agricultural products, namely the soybeans. But there still clearly remains a lot to be done before the two sides can say that they have sort of eased this back and forth trade tensions that we have seen really kind of roiling the global economy over the last several months. And so I think the step we saw today in easing some of the tensions with India, I think sort of goes to this idea that the president is trying to get all of these deals done and dusted before he can turn his full attention to trying and getting this critical agreement, the world's two largest trading partners, the U.S. and China, getting that squared away before that big trip in April.
All right, Kevin Liptak, live for us tonight from outside the White House. Thank you very much for joining us, CNN reporter Kevin Liptak. They're sharing the perspective from that side.